Good. Happy Thursday morning to you. I'm Connie Foote with Foote Title Group, where we know how overwhelming the home buying process can be. And it is honestly my passion to make sure that our team makes it simple for you to understand everything that you're doing. We keep you in the loop every step of the way, and we ensure that you and your home are protected when you walk away from that closing table with the keys. So this morning I wanted to first let me say a couple of things. Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is so important to me to get information out there to you, and it really makes me feel very helpful, and I love being able to provide information on real estate and tenancy and how things work. So it really is wonderful to have anybody who tunes in. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate you checking in. Good morning, Bridget. How are you? I really appreciate it. So if you get on, please check in and say hi, and please feel free to stop and ask any questions that you have. That is why I do this. That's why I love to talk to you, is to try to help you understand the different nuances that there are about buying real estate and closings and getting loans and all the different things that go into that. Because very honestly, when you do this, this should be fun. It should be exciting. It should be happy. And all of the pieces that go into it and all of the professionals that take care of all of that for you should be able to help you make that fun and easy and a happy process. So this morning I wanted to talk to you about buying property with other people, and what do you do? How does that work? People that are not your spouse. So it's a little bit different when you do that. And we've talked about this before, but I keep getting questions about it, so I figured I'd go back to it a little bit. So yesterday I got a question from someone who is a loan professional that I've worked with for a long time, and wanted to know, one of his customers was looking to buy a piece of property with her sister. And they wanted to know what happens when you buy a piece of property with somebody else. How do you own that? How does that work? And so I wanted to just get on and talk to you just a few minutes about the different ways that you can own property and what it means and how it happens. And I know some of you have heard this before, but sometimes when we talk about these things, maybe it may not be something that's apparent or obvious or going on in your world at the moment, so it may not stick. So I figured I would talk about it again. And again, please share anything that you see that we're talking about that you think is valuable. Please share with the people that you know, because it may not be something that you need, but it may definitely be something that somebody else needs, and they didn't even know that they didn't understand what that process was about. So please feel free to share. I would love for you to do that, because I'm all about getting the information out there that people need to make wise choices and to be able to do the right things for themselves and to make their home buying process simple and fun. So good morning, Miss Kathy. Hope you're having a good morning today. So what I did want to talk about is, like I said, about ownership. So two people buying a piece of property together, and it doesn't have to be two. It can be 10. It could be 5. More than one person who is not married and they buy a piece of property together. What happens? How do they own that property? So there's two different options for those people. And this whole ownership way of purchasing property together with someone else is called tenancy. How do you take title with someone else? That process is called tenancy. So it's something that we note on the deed when you take ownership of that property. When the seller signs over to you, we note how you want to own something with someone else, and that is called your tenancy. So 2 people or 3 people or 10 people want to own a piece of property together. How do they own it? They have 2 options. One is called joint tenants. And joint tenants is very similar to a married couple's ownership. It allows several people or 2 people to own a piece of property together, and they each own 100% of that property. Now you say, how the heck can that happen? Well, what that means is that no one can intervene in that ownership, that those 2 people own 100%, and that if something happens to one of them, it automatically transfers to the other person. It does not have to go through an estate process. It automatically becomes the other person's ownership completely. So 100% ownership by both people means both of them have to do everything together. They take out a mortgage, both of them have to be on the mortgage. If they if a lien or a judgment is filed against one of them, it cannot attach that ownership. It has to be filed against both of them because both of them own 100%. And again, the most important part is, well, one of the most important parts is the ownership, that if something happens to one of them, it automatically goes to the other person. Now, the other option, more than one person buying a piece of property together, is called tenants in common. Again, can be 2 people, 10 people, 50 people. Now, their ownership is a divided interest, and that divided interest is determined based on what those owners or those purchasers want their interest to be. So just because there's 2 people doesn't mean they have to own it 50-50. They could own it 2/3, 1/3. I mean, excuse me, 3/4, 1/4. They could own it in any percentages they wanted to, and that ownership, the way that is designed, that is how much of an ownership interest they have if they were to sell the property. If something happened to one of them, how it would work. So in tenants in common situation, number one, you have a divided interest that's specified when you take ownership of that property. So it would be listed in the deed, who owns it, that they're taking tenancy as tenants in common, but also what their interest percentage is. Now, if it's not noted, then it's determined that they're 50-50. And if there's a deed that lists the new owners, but it has no tenancy, it's automatically considered tenants in common. So this is really important to know, because the other thing that's really important about tenants in common is if one of them has a lien or a judgment that is filed against them, that it can attach the property. So if you own a piece of property with someone else and you own it as tenants in common, and they go out and unfortunately have a car accident and they're sued, and there's a judgment, a financial judgment, that attaches that piece of property. So you can't sell that piece of property without that judgment being addressed. It either has to be paid off, or if it's been paid off, it has to be released. It has to be addressed before you can sell the property. So good morning, Miss Amy. I hope you're doing well. This is my niece who's just went off to her first year in college. Really excited for her. I hope everything's going good. Tenants in common, as I said, divided interest. If something happens and one of them has a lien or a judgment filed against them, then it does attach the property. One of the the tenants in common can actually mortgage their interest without anybody else signing off, because remember, it's a divided interest. So each person can do whatever they want with their divided interest of that property. And then the big kicker is if something happens to one of them and they pass, that interest goes into that person's estate. So the remaining owners would then own that piece of property with that person's estate. So anyone that survived them. So let's say, for example, I buy a piece of property with my brother, and we take title as tenants in common, and something happens to him, then all of his ownership interest would go to his heirs, anyone who would have an interest in his estate. So then I would own that piece of property with his estate. And then once his estate is settled, whoever had got the interest for that piece of property, then I would own it with that person. So a lot of people do this, obviously, in those kind of situations because they have family and they want their interest in their property and their assets to go to their family. So a lot of times people will do that. 2 people buying a piece of property that are engaged maybe but not married, and one of them's putting all the money in, sometimes people do tenants in common for that reason, because what happens if the whole wedding blows up? It doesn't happen very often, but we all know that that's a possibility. Friends, college roommates, that may want to buy a piece of property together, they typically would do a tenants in common situation because all of their funds to do this are coming from all these different areas, and maybe their parents are helping out or whatever. So they want to make sure that their ownership, if they pass, is protected. And we all believe that we're never going to pass, but it happens, and it happens in freak ways that you don't expect. So these are important things to pay attention to. It's all part of that whole planning process to make sure that all your all your ducks are in the right order. But so the tenancy is really important. If you're buying a piece of property, you want to make sure that you understand what that process is and which way you want to be able to do it, particularly if you're not buying a piece of property by yourself or with a spouse. If you're buying it with someone who is not one of those two, then you definitely want to know a little bit more about your different options. And typically the company that you do your closing with should walk you through this and ask these questions. But sometimes things happen and it doesn't happen that way. So as always, I love to provide you information. I really appreciate you tuning in. Remember, all of this information is on our website. We try really hard. I'm always uploading information and trying to push information out there from our website. There's all kinds of resources on there. There's a whole section on our blog right now about tenancy and the different forms of it and how that works. So you can get that information there. There's articles there. On our resources page, there are home buyers guides, home sellers guides that talk about some of these things. There's a planning your move checklist. There's a buying a new home checklist. There is a book with samples of 50 of the most common documents you may sign at closing. You know, when you get to closing, one of the problems is, you know, there's so many things going on. There's people sitting everywhere. You want to learn more about the house that you're buying. And there's not a lot of opportunity to sit and read through all of the mortgage documents that you need to sign, which can be a little overwhelming. So we've accumulated 50 of the most common documents that you may see at closing. Now, they're not going to be exactly what you sign, so know that. And we have noted that in the package. And it doesn't have your specific loan information in it, but it gives you the meat and potatoes of what you're probably going to be signing. So it gives you the opportunity to look through that if you want to in advance. Again, that's on our resource page. And we are happy to help you with whatever we can. And if you think of something that maybe you think would be a good piece of information that we could put on our website, please let me know. You know, I do this all the time, and sometimes I don't know what you're actually looking for. So there's a lot of resources out there that we can add to our website, or things that you may see that you think might be helpful to you when you're going through the process. And I would love to be the company that helps you put that together for you. So, hi, my friend, Miss Judy. I hope you're having an awesome Thursday morning. Thanks for tuning in. So if there's anything I can help you with, please let me know. Remember, tenancy, there's two different options if you buy a property with someone else that is not your spouse. You can find some more information on our website. And for those of you tuning in not live, thank you so much for checking out our videos. And let me know if there's anything I can help you with going forward. I'm Connie Foote with Foote Title Group, where we protect your home ownership and we make sure that your home closing is the simple part. Have a great day, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.